Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning has hit theaters, being the last film in the series. Or is it? Let's just have our fingers crossed that this is the final Mission Impossible movie, and thus that concludes my reviews for the series. In terms of this movie though, it's been doing very well at box office, but what is the quality of the movie like? Before I hop into the review, keep in mind this is all just my opinion. Share what you think about the movie in the comments section down below, and without any further ado, let's hop right into it. This video contains spoilers. So this really just jumps into this dark setting where you can feel the end of the world coming. And there actually are quite a few flashbacks in this movie, especially in the first act, which I definitely understand why a lot of people are complaining about that. Although I don't mind them too much, I don't think they're as bad as they seem, because it kind of helps you feel how significant this is being the last chapter of the Mission Impossible franchise. Although admittedly, there are some points where the flashbacks are a little bit too excessive, but I wouldn't say it really takes me out of the viewing experience too much. And it is neat how the story here ties back into some of the stuff like with the rabbit's foot from the third movie, which is a very underrated movie. And it also ties back to previous movies just by bringing some old characters back. And I think just because this is the last movie in the franchise, it's very heavy on emotion and you're not really sure who's going to die. Luther is actually killed off very early, which definitely adds some weight to the story.
It's enough to make a grown man cry.
And from there, it just kind of follows Ethan and his team wanting to stop the entity from gaining too much control over the world, because it's already gained quite a bit of control. Because if they can't get rid of the entity, it's going to become a reality where the world is either destroyed or enslaved, making this movie have the highest stakes out of any Mission Impossible film. And of course you have a ticking clock in here, which definitely adds to the tension. Now, just like if there was some kind of disaster as bad as this in the real world, everyone wastes way too much time arguing over how they can handle the situation, and the government doesn't really trust Ethan even though he really needs to gain their trust. And then of course you also have Gabriel returning from Dead Reckoning as he wants to gain control over the entity. And long story short, the movie does have the happy ending where Ethan does not die. They were kind of setting up to where he almost did die, and I actually wouldn't have been surprised if they killed him off. It would have added quite a bit of emotional weight to the film. But in my opinion, the ending they went with is still equally as good, as long as this is actually the last film in the franchise and they don't make more, because it's just kind of an open ending where whatever happens to Ethan later on is left up to your imagination. So of course, Tom Cruise as Ethan Hunt in here is great. This is one of his best performances in the franchise, and it still kind of deals with the fact that he doesn't want any of his friends to be sacrificed. But he actually does kind of start to get an understanding of the fact that the world's at stake. So this is definitely a great character arc for him. And then Luther that I mentioned, who was killed off earlier on, the movie starts off with him having an unspecified illness. But when he is killed by the bomb right before it happens, it's just an amazing moment between him and Ethan. And you just know that he's at peace. Of course, you have Benji in here who takes more of a leadership role. And you have like the 3 other members of the team who are actually just introduced in the last movie, but you already care about them. And you have different government workers like the guy that was in the first movie and then Dead Reckoning in this movie, and then the former CIA director that's now the president, and of course the one McDonald's brother. Now of course one of the guys that was kind of hunting down Ethan in Dead Reckoning is revealed to be Jim Phelps' son, which I will say they didn't actually go anywhere too crazy with that. It didn't really affect the story, but it did kind of give you a different perspective. And then of course you have William Donlow returning from the first movie. I always kind of wondered what happened to him in the first movie, because there's no way he kept his job after that vault break-in, but then it turns out it actually benefited him because he lived a happy life. And so just seeing him back is something I think we all didn't even realize we wanted. And then of course you have the Dead Reckoning villain Gabriel and the entity. And I mean, this movie doesn't really add anything too much to those characters, other than the fact that the entity just seems even more creepier. But I mean, I wasn't really expecting much to be added. I was just expecting the story with them to continue. So as always, the stunts get crazier and crazier, and this might be the best movie in terms of the action. There's not a lot of huge stuff in the first act, which a lot of people were complaining about, but I don't think it was really a huge deal because there's still tension, and you do get some classic fist fights and whatnot. And by the way, even though this is the longest movie in the franchise at almost 3 hours, it never really gets boring. But the insane action really starts with the submarine scene. I mean, this scene keeps getting crazier and crazier because it starts off with Ethan having to go really deep underwater in the suit that's hard to move in. So that's crazy enough, but then when he has to leave the submarine, there's a really tight space he has to crawl out of, so he has to take most of his suit off and then carry it, and then it gets caught in the submarine, which by the way is like rolling off of this cliff, and so then he has to take his whole suit off and he has to hold his breath, and then he is eventually rescued. But I mean, it's just crazy. And then you get some more great action sequences, but the standout at the end is of course the plane sequence, and it's just crazy how much practical stuff they were able to do there. I mean, obviously with some safety precautions, but still, it's just insane. As a matter of fact, the trailers didn't even make it look as good as it was. So there's some really good cinematography, some good stuff they do with the lighting here and there, especially at the beginning. It really just captures the dark vibe. And of course, since this was big budget, they were able to film at a lot of different locations, and there was just a lot of practical stunts they were able to do. So I mean, I don't have to complain about bad quality CGI. So all the scores in this franchise are great. They remix the classic Mission Impossible theme in one way or another. But I thought Dead Reckoning randomly just like had the best theme because it was extra dramatic. And then now this movie kind of has the same deal, except it has even more emotion to the theme. Especially with the plane sequence where it's like his last mission and he's almost gonna die. It's just so good and just captures that emotion perfectly. As a matter of fact, this is probably one of the greatest film scores of all time. So overall, this is a movie that I think ties everything in the franchise nicely together and just definitely ends it with a bang. And I don't even know if this is a movie I would necessarily call fun, and that's not a bad thing because it does kind of have this dark vibe to it. Now, I do have some small issues here and there, like maybe the flashbacks were a little bit overused, but I mean, this movie just has a lot of emotion, some of the best action in the franchise, and I would say it's one of, if not the best movie in the franchise. I mean, most people on the internet have been giving this like an 8 out of 10, but I really don't find the problems to be that big. So overall, on the quality scale of 0 to 100, I'll give it a 94%, and I would definitely recommend it. This is something that you definitely want to see in the theaters.
Movies, popcorn.
If you've seen it, let me know what you think about it in the comment section down below. As always, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.